March 1944, Germany. Wing Commander Harry Day steps off a train wearing civilian clothes and forged papers. 4 days ago, he crawled out of the most famous tunnel of the war. Right now, deep inside the Reich, it is working. But it will not work for long. Days later, the same man walks through the gates of a concentration camp. Not a prison. A place with a crematorium. A place where guards tell new arrivals the only way out is the chimney. One of Britain's first POWs. The Nazis thought they had him. They didn't. He tunnels out with 17 men. Recaptured, forges a pass, walks through the front gate. Recaptured. Digs through a latrine in Poland. Recaptured. So the Reich builds its most secure camp and fills it with every dangerous escaper they have. He sends 76 men through a tunnel in one night. But here's what makes this unprecedented. Day is the only POW they ever escalated all the way to a death camp for escaping. He ends the war decorated with 2 of Britain's highest honors. His jailers ended on trial. How many times can one man break out? And what do you do when no cage holds? November 9, 1918, the North Sea, off the Strait of Gibraltar. A British battleship, HMS Britannia, is on patrol in the last days of the First World War. Aboard her, a 20-year-old Royal Marines lieutenant named Harry Melville Arbuthnot Day is on the upper deck when the ship is struck by a German U-boat torpedo. The torpedo opens the lower hull. The ship begins to be listed. Fires break out in engineering spaces. Men are trapped below. Day goes below. He goes down through smoke. He finds 3 men trapped in a flooding compartment. He drags them out one by one. He returns to the upper deck. He goes down again. He brings out 2 more things. The Britannia sinks 2 days before the armistice. 50 of her 712 men are lost. Day, who has been below decks twice in burning compartments while the vessel was actively going down, is one of the last men off. For his conduct that day, Lieutenant Day is awarded the Albert Medal, the highest British decoration for civilian gallantry. He is 20 years old. The medal will, decades later, be commuted to the George Cross. His name will be one of only a handful of men to hold both that decoration and the Distinguished Service Order. Between the wars, Day learns to fly. He becomes one of the Royal Air Force's most respected aerobatic display pilots. He flies in formation displays at Hendon. He is famous in his small professional world for 2 things: his mustache and his refusal to be impressed by any aircraft, any officer, or any rule. September 1939. War again. Day is 40 years old. He is a wing commander. He commands a squadron of Bristol Blenheim light bombers based in Norfolk. On October 13, 1939, 6 weeks into the war, he flies a low-level reconnaissance mission over German installations near Wilhelmshaven. His aircraft is shot down by an anti-aircraft fire. He is captured before nightfall. He is one of the first British prisoners of the Second World War. His Blenheim crashes near a village west of Wilhelmshaven. The crew of 3 are pulled from the wreckage by German farmers. One of his men is wounded. Day refuses medical attention for himself until the wounded crewman has been treated. The first photograph the Germans take of him that afternoon shows a man in a torn flight suit with a steady, unimpressed expression. The Germans send him to Dulag Luft, the Luftwaffe interrogation center at Oberursel. He is processed. He gives name, rank, and number. Day, Wing Commander, 41743. The officer leans forward. And the rest of it? Day looks at him evenly. That is the rest of it. He says nothing else. He is moved to a permanent prisoner of war camp. The Germans made a choice they will quietly regret for the next 5 years. They make Wing Commander Day the senior British officer of the camp. Within 6 months, he has built inside the camp an organization the Germans do not know exists. It forges documents. It produces civilian clothes from prisoner uniforms. It procures maps. It builds tunnels. In the spring of 1941, Day leads the first mass tunnel escape of the war. He and 17 other officers go out under the wire of Stalag Luft 1, near Barth. Through a tunnel, they have spent 3 months digging from a barracks washroom. The tunnel breaks open in a forest. Day walks west toward the Baltic. He is recaptured 5 days later, on a road 60 miles from the camp, looking like a tramp. The Germans put him in solitary. He has no paper, no pen, 4 walls, and a failure to reconstruct. He reconstructs it. The tunnel broke open short of the tree line visible from the guard post. The sand dispersal had left a faint discoloration on the compound ground that a guard noticed 3 weeks before the escape. The forged photographs were marginally off-center, the kind of detail a bored checkpoint officer notices on a slow afternoon. He runs through every failure point the way a pilot runs a crash sequence, working backwards from recapture to the first avoidable mistake. By the time Solitary ends, he has the next operation half built in his head. Recapture is not defeated, it is data. The Germans have his name now. They have a file on him. The file will get thicker every year for the rest of the war. They are beginning to understand that they have a problem. How do you stay ahead of a system that is now learning from your every mistake? And what does the Reich do when it finally accepts that ordinary camps cannot hold him? After the Barth Tunnel, Day is moved to a tougher camp. He begins again. The interpreter walks out of the camp in May 1942. He wears a gray suit tailored from a German civilian coat smuggled in 8 months earlier. He carries a briefcase built by a prisoner cobbler from salvaged leather. The pass he shows at the gate is forged on a typewriter for the prisoners assembled from stolen parts. He has memorized every guard's name, every shift rotation, every greeting a German civilian employee would plausibly use. He speaks fluent German. He has studied this gate, this guard, and this routine for 4 months. The guard salutes. He raises the boom. Day walks through. 40 hours later, he is on a train near Hanover. A Gestapo officer is waiting specifically for him. The pass is identified as a forgery. Back in Solitary. He runs the sequence again. The tip-off is the failure point. His absence was flagged faster than the paperwork could hold. A cover identity needs a longer paper trail, more documents, not just a pass. The railway is too exposed to this close to the camp. He needs more distance on foot before boarding anything. He files the corrections in the same place he files everything, his memory. In late 1942, he is transferred to Schubin in occupied Poland. The Germans believe distance from the British coast discourages escape. They are right that the coast no longer matters. They are wrong about the rest. At Schubin, Day organizes a tunnel from a latrine, chosen because it is the one building the German guards find least pleasant to inspect closely. The tunnel runs 40 meters, under 2 perimeter fences, breaking open in a field beyond the camp. On the night of March 5th, 1943, 33 officers go out. Day is among them. He strikes east toward Danzig. His papers identify him as a Latvian dock worker. He speaks no Latvian. The MP looks at the card and says something in Latvian. Day raises a hand. Only German, I'm afraid. There's been a mistake when the labor office gave me the wrong card. I'm a Polish laborer. The MP stares at him. Polish, Day says again. The bluff lasts 12 seconds. Back in Solitary. He runs the sequence. The language gap is the failure point. A cover identity built around what a route requires rather than what he has. He speaks German. Every future identity will be built around that. He will not make the same mistake twice. He never does. This is what the Germans cannot account for. He is not demoralized. He is not broken. He is conducting a systematic study of their defenses, one failed attempt at a time. Each recapture costs him weeks of solitary. It costs them a permanent lesson about their own vulnerabilities. By the spring of 1943, a list is compiled at the Reich Security Main Office. It is short. It contains the names of British officers no ordinary camp has been able to hold. The penalty attached to those names is rising. Standard solitary is no longer the default response. The SS is now involved in their oversight. Day is on the list. The solution the Germans arrive at looks decisive in their own estimation. They are finishing Stalag Luft 3 near Sagan, and they intend to fill it with every man on the list. Concentrate on the problem. Contain it in one place. Solve it once. They are not concentrating on a problem, they are concentrating on the workforce. Every dangerous escaper the Luftwaffe has identified across occupied Europe, the best forgers, tunnelers, document men, tailors, map makers, and distraction specialists the Royal Air Force has produced, assembled in a single compound by German order. Day arrives at Stalag Luft 3 in April 1943. He looks at the higher fences. The subsurface microphones are designed to detect tunneling, the extended perimeter, the new guard towers, the dogs. Then he looks at the prisoners. He knows almost all of them by name. He understands within an hour what the Germans have built. Not a solution, but a team. What happens when 600 men, gathered by their own enemy, attempt the largest escape in the history of warfare? And how does the Reich respond when 76 of its most dangerous prisoners walk out in a single night? The escape committee at Stalag Luft 3 is called the X organization. Day sits on its senior council. The day-to-day operation is run by a younger officer named Roger Bushel, a barrister, one of the men on the German escapers list. who has been breaking out of camps since 1940. In the spring of 1943, Bushell proposes 3 tunnels dug simultaneously: Tom, Dick, and Harry. 250 men out in a single night, the largest mass escape in the history of warfare. Day approves it. 600 men work on it for 11 months. The tunnels are dug 30 feet below the surface, beneath the floors of 3 different barracks. The sand is dispersed across the compound through bags concealed in trouser legs, the carriers nicknamed penguins. The tunnels are shored with stolen bedboards, lit by stolen electrical wiring, ventilated by hand-built bellows. Tunnel Tom is discovered in September 1943. Tunnel Dick is converted to storage. Tunnel Harry continues. On the night of March 24, 1944, Tunnel Harry breaks open beyond the perimeter wire. The exit falls short, opening 15 feet inside the tree line rather than beyond it. The escape committee discusses calling it off. They do not. They go. 76 men go out before the 77th is seen by a guard, and the alarm sounds. Day is the 7th man out, dressed as a foreign civilian worker, carrying forged papers, a ration of bread and cheese, and a folding map of Central Europe drawn from memory by a fellow officer who had once worked in a German cartographer's office. He reaches the Sagan railway station. He boards a train to Berlin. He travels with another officer, Polish-born and fluent in German. They change trains. They continue north towards Stettin on the Baltic coast. They are betrayed by an informer at a Stettin guest house on April 1st. What follows is easy to write quickly. It is wrong to write it that way. The Gestapo takes them into custody. Day is interrogated for 6 days in a holding facility outside Berlin by a senior SS official, the same man who compiled the kill list and is now managing the investigation into the largest escape in the history of the war. The officer wants names. He wants methods. He wants the full architecture of the X organization, the forgers, the tailors, the document men, every link in the chain. Day gives him nothing. For 6 days, in a facility where the walls carry evidence of what the SS does to people who withhold things, Day gives name, rank, and number. The same 3 answers he gave at Dulag Luft in 1939. The same answers he has given at every interrogation for 4.5 years. The answers of a man who decided, somewhere before the first cage closed, what he will and will not give away, regardless of what it costs him. While he sits in that room, Adolf Hitler reads the morning reports on the Great Escape and gives an order. Every recaptured officer is to be shot. The order is modified within 48 hours by Heinrich Himmler. Not canceled, modified. 50 of the 76 are to be murdered. The selection is made by Gestapo officers. The order is read at a senior staff meeting on March 29th. It is not contested. In the 10 days that follow, Gestapo officers drive out of their headquarters in pairs. They collect their assigned prisoners. They drive them to forest roads selected in advance from police maps and shoot each man in the back of the head. The bodies are cremated. The ashes are returned to Stalag Luft 3 in urns, with paperwork claiming the men were shot attempting further escape. Day is not among the 50. Not from mercy. He is too prominent to quietly kill. His name is known to the Red Cross, known to the British government. His disappearance would cause a diplomatic incident the Reich cannot afford. A different decision is made. On the morning of April 8th, a car arrives at the holding facility. He is driven northwest out of Berlin toward a camp that appears on no prisoner of war list. The camp is called Sachsenhausen. When the car passes through the main gate, a fellow officer already inside the compound is told by a German guard that the only way out is up the chimney. Does the refusal that broke every POW camp in the Reich hold up inside a place built not to hold people, but to erase them? And what does a man do when the only exit the guards will acknowledge is the chimney? Sachsenhausen is a concentration camp, not a prison camp, not a labor camp in the ordinary sense. One of the original camps of the SS system, built in 1936, run by Death's Head units, with a crematorium capable of burning 100 bodies a day. 60,000 people will die in it before the war ends. Day is not housed in the main camp. He is housed in Sonderlager A, a walled enclosure within the facility holding approximately a dozen prisoners, all considered too valuable to kill outright and too dangerous to keep anywhere ordinary. 3 other great escapers are already there. The roster is, even by the standards of this war, remarkable. Stalin's eldest son, captured at the front in 1941, is held in the adjacent compound across the wire. There are former government ministers from occupied countries, an Italian officer who served on Mussolini's personal staff, a Soviet general. Day looks at all of them carefully. He and the 3 other great escapers say nothing to anyone outside their group. The compound holds men from countries and services whose full loyalties cannot be confirmed, and in a place where one wrong word passed to one wrong person could end an operation before a single shovel of sand has moved. Whatever they attempt must be kept invisible not only from the SS guards, but from the other inmates of the Sonderlager itself. The penalty for an escape attempt from Sachsenhausen is not solitary confinement. It is the death cells, standing room concrete cells beside the camp execution wall, where prisoners are held between interrogation sessions and shot at the convenience of the SS. Day, on his first morning in Sonderlager A, finds one of his fellow great escapers in the small exercise yard. He looks at him. He looks at the chimney smoking beyond the inner fence. He looks at the walls. Day looks at the chimney for a moment, then back at the man beside him. "You see that chimney?" He keeps his voice low. "We'd better start digging." They begin the following week. The conditions are unlike anything the X organization ever worked under. No 600 workers, no stolen electrical wiring, no penguins dispersing sand across a compound. 4 men, table knives sharpened on concrete, digging at night in 2-hour shifts, 1 man always at the window watching for guards. Sand disposed of a cupful at a time inside trouser pockets, walked around the exercise yard in 1 circuit at a time. The dig site is under the floor of a wooden storage building the SS uses infrequently. The sand goes under the floorboards because there is nowhere else for it to go. The dig takes 5 months. In those 5 months, they watch a column of prisoners walk to the execution wall each morning. They hear rifle volleys. They smell what the chimney smells like when the wind comes from the east. They build a Christmas card on a piece of toilet paper, signed by all 4 of them, and save it for after the war. On the moonless night of September 23, 1944, the tunnel breaks open beyond the wire, 120 feet long, 8 feet below the ground. The exit shaft surfaces in a small wood beyond the perimeter fence, exactly where they calculated. The 4 men go out. It is the first escape in the history of Sachsenhausen. Not the first attempt, the first success. The SS has been telling arrivals for 8 years that the chimney is the only exit. 4 men with table knives have just made that a lie. Day moves alone. He is 45 years old, 5 years a prisoner. No papers, no money, just the suit issued for an exchange that never came, and the same refusal he has carried out of every cage before this one. He intends to reach the Czech border on foot, 300 miles south. He is loose, again, inside Nazi Germany. What happens to a man who escapes a concentration camp and is caught again with his execution order already written? And how do you survive death cells when the footsteps stop outside your door every morning? They caught him, near the village of Velten, north of Berlin, on the 2nd day. A German policeman watching the rail lines. Day is returned to Sachsenhausen on September 26, 1944, and taken directly to the death cells. The death cells are concrete standing room cells. 1 narrow window set high. He is chained to the wall, fed once a day. The execution wall is close enough that he can hear what happens there each morning. He expects to be shot. The 3 other escapers are recaptured over the following 2 weeks and placed in adjacent cells. They can hear each other through the walls and nothing else. Each morning, when the guards' footsteps come down the corridor and stop outside a door, each man in those cells makes the same private calculation about whether today the morning is the SS settles the account. They know about 50. They know that men they helped train, men who slept in the same barracks and carried sand in their trouser legs, were driven to forest roads and shot through the back of the head. They know the order that killed those men came from the top, was not contested, and was carried out efficiently. They know the same logic applies to them. They escaped from a concentration camp. The order to execute them is, in fact, prepared, written, sitting on a desk in the camp administration waiting for a signature. It is never signed. The reason is the same reason Day was not among the 50. He is very prominent. By the autumn of 1944, the British government has formally protested the murders through the Swiss diplomatic channel. The German Foreign Office has cautioned the Reich Security Main Office against further executions of high-ranking British officers. The war is being lost, and the accounts are beginning to be drawn up, and the men doing the calculating on both sides know it. Day, chained in his cell, knows none of this. He continues to expect, every morning, that this is the one. He is moved from the death cells in February 1945, transferred to a Sonderlager attached to Dachau with other high-value prisoners, then moved south as the Reich collapses. A column of diplomats, generals, churchmen, and the family of the man who had tried to kill Hitler, walking ahead of the Allied advance into the Alps. In late April 1945, the column reaches Niederdorf in the South Tyrol. The SS guards, under orders to execute the prisoners rather than allow liberation, are disarmed by a Wehrmacht unit that has decided the war is over. Day walks out of the Niederdorf Hotel on May 4th, 1945. He is met by an American officer. The American officer steps forward. "Wing Commander Day." Day straightens. "The same." "Sir, you're free." Day looks at him for a moment. "Yes," he says. "I know. For the first time in 5.5 years, he is free." He requests active duty within 6 weeks. He is awarded the Distinguished Service Order, one of only 2 men in British military history to receive that decoration for conduct as a prisoner of war. His Albert Medal from the burning Britannia is commuted by royal warrant to the George Cross. He becomes one of a handful of men ever to hold both. In 1947, 18 Gestapo officers are tried in Hamburg for the murders of the 50. 14 are sentenced to death. Day testifies. He stands in that courtroom and delivers his account to the men who compiled the kill list and ordered his interrogation in Berlin. He gives it clearly, without theater. It is the same composure he brought to every room they ever put him in. He ends the war. They end it answering him. Consider what the Reich actually built across those 5 years. They started with a standard POW camp and escalated every time they failed. Tougher camps, purpose-built escape-proof facilities, the Gestapo, a kill list, and finally a concentration camp with a crematorium. The most extreme custodial measure the Third Reich possessed, applied to a single prisoner of war for the crime of refusing to stay put. Every escalation was a confession. Each upgrade was an admission that the last cage had failed, and they did not understand why. The reason they could not understand it is that they were solving a technical problem. Better walls, deeper wire, harsher penalties. The problem was not technical. The problem was that Day had decided, somewhere before the first cell door closed on him, that no situation was final. Not a sinking ship, not solitary confinement, not a death camp, not chains beside an execution wall while the footsteps stopped outside his door each morning. Every obstacle he ever faced he treated as a problem to be studied, understood, and resolved. He brought to each cage the same steadiness he had carried down through the smoke of HMS Britannia in 1918. The same composure that looked out from that first photograph in the torn flight suit with the unimpressed eyes. He was not a man they failed to break because he was lucky, though luck played its part, and luck is a thing that tends to find men who are still moving. He was a man they could not break because he did not experience captivity the way they needed him to. Walls work on men who accept them as permanent. Day never did. From the first morning at Stalag Luft 1 to the last morning in the death cells at Sachsenhausen, the cage was always to him a temporary problem with an eventual solution. The cages were never the story. The refusal was. Harry Melville Arbuthnot Day dies in 1977. He is 78 years old, 5 years spent in German captivity. More escapes than any other man in the British Armed Forces by his own account, and he had stopped counting once the war began. The men who built every cage he broke out of ended the war with their commanders on trial. The man they could not cage ended it with 2 of his country's highest honors, his testimony in a Hamburg courtroom, and 32 years of life still ahead of him. If you want to understand what happens when 2 families stare at a border built with minefields, dogs, and shoot-to-kill orders, and decide the only exit no one thought to defend against is straight up and build the thing to prove it, in secret, in the dark, that story is already up.